Now joined by Alexander Rodnyansky. He's a presidential advisor to Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky and an assistant professor at the University of Cambridge, and he joins us live from Kiev. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. It's good to see you once again. Now, we did hear from your foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, talk at the meeting in Bucharest, and he mentioned a list of weapons that Ukraine still needs. And he also mentioned generators, a dire need of generators. But there are concerns that the countries providing this assistance won't be able to send them over to Ukraine in time. How is this affecting operations on the ground, especially when critical infrastructure is being targeted?
Yes, well, absolutely. It's making the situation on the ground more complicated. It's complicating our war efforts. It's complicating our economic recovery efforts. I mean, obviously, the Russians are launching increasing attacks. We have the anticipation that they will be launching new attacks soon. We have intelligence to suggest that. And the unfortunate news there is that we're on a downward trajectory. In other words, we don't have enough time to restore our electricity and energy infrastructure before the other attack happens. So we're on a downward trend as far as our capacity goes and our facilities in order for us to receive enough energy and have the necessary means to survive and have the heating and the electricity in place. So that's one part. It's economic. The other part, of course, is military. So if we're not going to get the weapons in time, the air defense systems in time, it's also going to make the situation in the Donbass area, where there's currently an attack that the Russians are launching that you just reported on, more difficult for us. So, it's bad news all around.
Right, and we did hear from analysts say that as winter approaches, the fighting will slow down in the country. Do you still think that that might happen, even though we're seeing Russia continue its aggressive attacks on Ukraine?
Well, the winter temperatures in the winter itself has certainly slowed things down on both sides. I mean, it's just the natural cause of action that happens when you can't really move forward, when the weather complicates progression for both sides, for tanks, for armored vehicles to move along. So that's natural. But we do see that the Russians are still trying to plow ahead. They're trying to force their offensive in the east, and they've relocated some of their most combat-ready and experienced troops from the Kherson area that we've liberated recently into the Donbass. And so that's yet another reason why they're somewhat more successful now, even though they're not really having a lot of success. I mean, we're still capable of striking back and preventing them taking too much ground. Mm-hmm. But certainly winter is complicating things.
As a Ukrainian, when you hear Stoltenberg reassure Ukraine that eventually they will be part of the alliance, how significant is that politically for the country? And are there fears that this might increase Russia's aggression against Ukraine? Because that was one of the reasons why that Putin started this invasion.
Well, I think NATO in general and having NATO protection, being part of the NATO club, is good as a protective measure rather than a measure that puts us at risk. However, on the way there, of course, many things can happen. And what we're seeing right now is already the ultimate escalation. So Russia is already invading Ukraine, trying to subdue Ukraine, trying to conquer the whole country, essentially. And while it's failing, it's trying to use, hunger, it's trying to use winter as a weapon. It's trying to basically orchestrate yet another genocide as in the 1930s during the Holodomor, terror, famine, etc. So I think having NATO protection is good. But on the way there, Russia, of course, will do its utmost to sabotage our accession. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
And we also heard from Ursula von der Leyen. She proposed the formation of a specialized court backed by the UN to investigate possible war crimes that have been committed by Russia. Some of the reports that we've seen so far, I have to say, are gruesome. Do you think the ones that are responsible of those war crimes will be held accountable?
Well, yes, and let me tell you, we only know a fraction. We don't even know the majority of the terrible crimes that have been perpetrated on our territory. I mean, just the things that we know anecdotally from Mariupol, which is the area that is still under occupation, obviously, and where the Russians have had time to cover things up, is staggering. It's just, unheard of, it's unimaginable. So let me tell you, there's still a lot more to learn. And yes, we are hopeful that we will be putting those responsible at some point in the future to justice. We'll be bringing them to justice. And that obviously hinges on transition in Russia at some point. As I said before, the ultimate solution and the end to the conflict and the war lies in Russia's regime faltering and collapsing. And once that happens, then even within Russia, there'll be forces that'll be interested in putting these people to justice. And I hope that's exactly what we'll see.
All right, the presidential advisor to Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, Alexander Rodnyansky, thank you so much for your contributions to our coverage.